There's a question that keeps scientists, police officers, and regular people awake at night. It seems simple, but the answer is anything but. Why do some people hurt others? Not by accident, not in the heat of anger, but carefully, coldly, again and again. What makes someone capable of looking into another person's eyes and feeling nothing? Tonight, we're going on a journey into the darkest corners of the human mind. But here's what makes this different. Everything you're about to hear is real. These aren't movie villains. These are real people who walked among us, smiled at neighbors, and hid secrets that would shock the world. And the most terrifying part? Some of them are still out there. If you're ready to understand what really goes on inside the mind of a killer, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to discover will change the way you see the world forever. And leave a comment below. Do you think people are born evil? Or does something happen to make them that way? Let's start with a man nobody suspected. His name was Dennis Rader. He lived in a quiet Kansas town, had a wife, 2 children, and went to church every Sunday. For 30 years, he lived a normal life. But Dennis Rader had another life. He called himself BTK. It stood for bind, torture, kill. Between 1974 and 1991, he murdered 10 people. But here's the part that baffled everyone. After 1991, he just stopped. For 13 years, BTK disappeared. And Dennis Rader? He went to church. He coached youth groups. He even installed security systems in people's homes. How does someone live 2 completely different lives and never show a crack in the mask? To understand, we need to look inside the brain. There's a part right behind your forehead called the prefrontal cortex. It's like a supervisor that controls your emotions and helps you understand right from wrong. When scientists scanned the brains of violent criminals, they found something shocking. Many of them had less activity in this area. It was like the supervisor had left the factory. But not everyone with these brain differences becomes a killer. So what's the missing piece? Many violent criminals also had something else in common: terrible childhoods. Pain and fear can actually change how a child's brain develops. It's not an excuse for what they do later, but it might be part of the explanation. Yet Dennis Rader's childhood seemed normal. The darkness was inside. He had secret thoughts about tying people up and having complete power over them. He learned to smile, to act normal, to be 2 people at once. Scientists call this compartmentalization. He could separate the good from the evil in his mind, like closing a door between 2 rooms. Now let's talk about another man, Ted Bundy. On the street, he was handsome, friendly, charming. The kind of person you could trust. And many people did. That's how he got close to them. Ted Bundy killed at least 30 young women. But unlike Rader, Bundy loved the attention. After he was caught, he talked to reporters and detectives, enjoying his fame, as if he were an expert. He was playing a game. Scientists have a name for people like this: psychopaths. A psychopath doesn't feel emotions the way most people do. They see other people as objects to be used. They're charming because they've learned it helps them get what they want. But not all psychopaths become killers. Some become surgeons or CEOs, where being emotionally detached can be an advantage. So what pushes one to become a killer? The answer is still a mystery. One test, the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, measures traits like lying, lack of remorse, and charm. Ted Bundy would have scored very high. But here's the strange part. Scientists estimate that about 1 in every 100 people in the general population would also score pretty high. 1%. Does that mean they're dangerous? No. Most will never hurt anyone. So again, what's the difference? Let's look at one more killer, and this one is different. Jeffrey Dahmer. He killed 17 young men. But unlike Bundy, Dahmer seemed sad. When he was caught, he didn't run or lie. He confessed to everything, almost relieved it was over. He said he didn't want to kill people. He just didn't want them to leave him. Dahmer was terribly lonely. He felt different. His fantasies were about creating someone who would never abandon him. The important point is, Jeffrey Dahmer knew what he was doing was wrong. He felt guilty. He even tried to stop. Does understanding why he did it mean we should feel sorry for him? Most people, including Dahmer himself, said no. He called his own actions evil and was eventually killed in prison. So we have 3 killers: Rader, Bundy, and Dahmer. All did terrible things, but their minds worked in very different ways. Rader compartmentalized his life. Bundy was a classic, attention-seeking psychopath. Dahmer was a lonely man who felt guilty but was pulled by dark desires he couldn't control. This is why understanding the criminal mind is so important. If we can figure out what makes people do these things, maybe we can stop them. But it's not simple. Most people with similar brain differences or difficult childhoods never hurt anyone. One clue might be fantasy. Many serial killers spend years thinking about their crimes, planning them in their minds, letting the thoughts grow stronger until one day, thinking isn't enough. Dennis Rader said his dark fantasies started when he was just a boy. For years, they were only thoughts. But thoughts are powerful. They can shape who you become. The line between a dark thought and a dark action is a mystery we're still trying to solve. Another clue is isolation. When people feel disconnected, when they don't have friends or family who make them feel valued, when they feel like outsiders, the line between right and wrong can start to blur. Jeffrey Dahmer felt desperately alone. Ted Bundy, despite being charming on the outside, never formed real connections with people. He saw women as objects, not as real people. A third clue is opportunity. Some people might have dark thoughts, but they never act on them because they're never in the right situation, or because they're afraid of getting caught, or because something in their life keeps them anchored to reality. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, stopped killing for 13 years. Why? Scientists think it might be because his children were growing up and some part of him wanted to be a good father. But when his children moved out, he started killing again. It's like there are multiple forces pushing and pulling at these people. Sometimes the good forces win. Sometimes the dark forces win. Now let me tell you about something that sounds like science fiction, but it's real. In the 1970s, a man started having terrible headaches. He also started having dark, violent thoughts he'd never had before. He began looking at illegal images and making inappropriate comments. This man had never had problems like this. He was a normal person with a job and a family. His family took him to a doctor who did a brain scan and found something shocking: a large tumor in the part of his brain that controls behavior and decision-making. The doctors removed it. And guess what? The dark thoughts went away. The behavior stopped. The man went back to being himself. A few years later, the headaches and the dark thoughts returned. Another scan showed the tumor had grown back. They removed it again, and again, the man returned to normal. This true story shows us that sometimes the line between biology and behavior is thinner than we think. This man wasn't evil. His brain was sick. When the sickness was removed, the behavior disappeared. This brings up a complicated question. If someone's brain is damaged or different, and that makes them do terrible things, are they responsible for their actions? The law says yes. Society says yes. But science says maybe it's more complicated. This doesn't mean we should let dangerous people walk free. But it does mean that understanding why someone does something might be the key to preventing it from happening in the first place. So, can we spot a future killer before they hurt anyone? Some people point to warning signs, like children who hurt animals for fun. This was true for many serial killers like Dahmer and Rader. Others point to children who set fires or wet the bed late into their teens. These three signs together are sometimes called the McDonald triad. But here's the problem. Many children show these signs and never hurt anyone. They're just clues that a child might need help, not a prediction. It's also important to remember that most violent crime isn't committed by serial killers. It's committed by regular people in moments of anger, fear, or desperation. These people aren't psychopaths. They're just people who made terrible choices in terrible moments. But by studying the most extreme criminals, we can understand the whole spectrum of human violence. It's a complicated mix of biology, psychology, experience, and choice. Let's return to Dennis Rader. Remember, he stopped killing for 13 years, then started again. Why? In 2004, newspapers wrote about the anniversary of his first murder. He read these articles and missed the attention, the secret identity that the whole city feared. So he started sending letters and clues to the police. His biggest mistake was sending a floppy disk. The police traced it back to a computer at his church, got his DNA from his daughter's medical records, and in 2005, they arrested him. In court, he described his crimes with no emotion, like he was reading a shopping list. He was sentenced to 10 life sentences. Later, he told psychologists he wished he could have stopped himself, that something inside him was stronger than his will. Was he telling the truth? We'll never know. But we do know he chose to send those letters, and that choice led to his capture. This leads us to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. You've probably seen them on TV. They create profiles of criminals to help catch them by studying crime scenes. Are they organized or disorganized? Did they plan carefully or act on impulse? For example, Ted Bundy was highly organized. He planned his crimes, chose specific victims, and hid the bodies. This is why he got away with it for so long. Jeffrey Dahmer was also organized, but he brought his victims to his apartment, creating his own dark world where he had complete control. This science has helped catch many criminals, but it's not magic. The human mind is unpredictable. We've learned that the line between normal and dangerous is thin. That biology, experience, and choice all play a part. Understanding doesn't mean excusing, but it might mean preventing. There's no simple answer to why some people hurt others. But our journey isn't over. In the next video, we'll explore even more mysteries. What happens in someone's mind in the moment they choose to hurt another person? Can we predict violence? And what does spending your life looking into this darkness do to you? Imagine a room deep inside a maximum security prison. It has no windows, just concrete walls, a metal table, and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. In one chair sits a man who has killed multiple people. In the other chair sits someone whose job is to understand why. This is where the real mystery begins. Because to truly understand the criminal mind, someone has to sit across from these people, look them in the eyes, and ask questions nobody else dares to ask. Dr. Robert Hare, the scientist who created the psychopathy test, spent decades doing just that. He would sit with violent criminals for hours, listening to their stories. He noticed something strange. When psychopaths talked about their crimes, their voices would stay flat, emotionless, but their words would be dramatic. One prisoner told Dr. Hare about killing someone, using phrases like, "I had to put them down," as if he were talking about an old car that stopped working. Another called his victims targets or opportunities. They weren't people, they were things. But here's what made Dr. Hare's skin crawl. Sometimes, these criminals would smile when talking about their crimes. A tiny curl at the corner of the mouth, like they were remembering something pleasant. He realized he was seeing someone who genuinely didn't understand why what they did was wrong. They knew the law said it was wrong, but deep inside, where the rest of us feel guilt and shame, they felt nothing. Or worse, pride. What happens in a normal person's brain when they see someone in pain? Scientists have done experiments showing people pictures of others being hurt. In most people, specific brain areas light up, the parts that handle empathy. You almost feel the other person's pain. It's what makes us care about each other. But when they did the same test with violent criminals who scored high on the psychopathy test, those brain areas didn't light up. It was like a broken light switch. These people could see pain and feel nothing. Or sometimes, something even more disturbing, pleasure. Some of their brains actually show activity in reward centers when they see others suffering. The same part of your brain that enjoys chocolate or your favorite song lights up in their brains when they see pain. Imagine that. Your brain being wired so differently that another person's suffering feels good. That's not a choice. That's biology. But situation matters too. The famous Stanford prison experiment taught us that. In 1971, regular college students were randomly made guards and prisoners in a fake prison. The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks, but was stopped after 6 days. Why? The guards became cruel, and the prisoners became depressed and anxious. It taught us that maybe all of us have the capacity for cruelty under the right conditions. But here's the difference. When the experiment ended, the guards felt guilty and shocked by their own behavior. Real psychopaths don't feel that guilt. Dr. and Burgess, one of the first people to study serial killers by interviewing them directly, noticed a pattern. Many had 3 things in common from childhood: abuse or neglect, feeling powerless, and rich fantasy lives where they were in control. As children, they escaped into imaginations not of adventure, but of power and control. Over years, these fantasies grew more violent, more real, until one day, fantasy wasn't enough. Many described a moment when they crossed that line for the first time. They were nervous, they made mistakes, but they didn't get caught, and the fear turned into excitement. Each time after, it got easier. The guilt faded. That's how someone becomes a serial killer. Gradually. And if you're finding this fascinating, make sure you're subscribed, because we're going deeper. Drop a comment. Would you be able to sit in a room with a serial killer and interview them? What might surprise you is that some serial killers want to be caught. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, is a perfect example. After years of silence, he started sending letters to the police, almost begging to be found. He asked if a floppy disk could be traced. The police said no. He sent it. They traced it. They caught him. Why take such a risk? Maybe the thrill was gone. Maybe he wanted attention. Or maybe it was pure arrogance, believing he was too smart to get caught. But what about the ones who never make that mistake? Are there serial killers out there who have never been caught? The FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative tracks bodies found near highways across America. Many victims were travelers, killed by someone who has never been identified. The FBI believes there could be multiple serial killers using America's highways right now, disappearing into the millions of trucks on the road. This is the nightmare that keeps investigators awake at night. The perfect crime isn't just possible, it's probably happening. But let's talk about hope. Modern forensic science is incredible. DNA can identify someone from a single hair. In recent years, police have used genetic genealogy to catch killers who got away decades ago. They upload DNA from old crime scenes to public genealogy websites, build family trees, and find their killer. The Golden State Killer, who terrorized California in the 70s and 80s, was caught this way in 2018. He had been free for over 30 years. Science caught him. So, can these people be helped? Traditional therapy doesn't work well on psychopaths. Some even use it to become better manipulators. But some research suggests that if you catch warning signs in childhood, you might be able to help. It's not about fixing them, but about giving them tools to manage their impulses before it's too late. Finally, we must remember the victims. Every person murdered by these killers had a life, dreams, and people who loved them. Their families live with a pain that never goes away. This isn't just a story about darkness. It's a story about them, and about the dedicated people who work tirelessly to bring them justice. And often, families never get satisfactory answers. Because even when killers are caught, even when they confess, they rarely give families the closure they desperately need. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, showed no remorse in court. He described his crimes like he was reading a grocery list. The family sat there, crying, angry, broken, and he felt nothing. Ted Bundy played games until the very end, hinting at more victims he never officially confessed to, keeping families in agonizing uncertainty. Understanding the criminal mind isn't just an academic exercise. It's about protecting people. It's about preventing these tragedies. It's about honoring the victims by making sure their deaths weren't meaningless. Every piece of knowledge we gain about why people kill might help us stop the next one. That's why this work matters. Let me tell you about a different kind of case, one that shows how complex the human mind can be. In 1968, a 10-year-old girl named Mary Bell killed two little boys in England. 10 years old. What could make a child capable of such a thing? When investigators looked into her background, they found horror. She suffered terrible abuse at the hands of her mother. Her brain was still developing, but it had learned that violence was a way to deal with problems, and that other people's pain didn't matter. Does that excuse what she did? Absolutely not. But it does help us understand. Mary was caught and imprisoned. But here's where the story takes a turn. She was eventually released. And by all accounts, she became a functioning member of society. She never killed again. How is that possible? Some scientists believe it's because her brain was still developing when she committed her crimes. With therapy and time, her brain healed somewhat. It shows us that the mind is not fixed. People can change. This raises tough questions about second chances and the line between justice and rehabilitation. There are no easy answers. So, why do some people hurt others? We've learned that violence is born from a perfect storm of factors: biology, psychology, experience, opportunity, and choice. Some people are born with brains that make empathy harder, but most of them don't become killers. Terrible childhoods can damage developing brains, but most abuse survivors don't hurt anyone. Violent fantasies can grow, but most people with dark thoughts never act on them. The truth is, there are warning signs, but they're not guarantees. We've learned that science is improving, but mysteries remain. Most importantly, we've learned that understanding evil doesn't mean accepting it. It means fighting it more effectively. The people who study criminal minds, the profilers, the psychologists, the investigators, carry a heavy burden. FBI profiler John Douglas, who interviewed America's most dangerous serial killers, said he had to learn to leave the darkness at work. He couldn't bring it home to his family. It's the same compartmentalization killers use, but investigators use it to protect us. And studying evil takes a toll. Yet they continue, because someone has to. Because every monster caught means countless victims are spared. So, what should you take away from all this? First, be aware. Most people are good, but predators exist, and they're good at seeming normal. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong about someone, it might be. Second, have compassion for victims. They did nothing to deserve what happened to them. Third, support the people who fight this darkness. They see things that would break most of us, and they do it to keep us safe. And finally, remember that knowledge is power. The more we understand about why people commit violence, the better we can prevent it. The criminal mind remains one of humanity's greatest mysteries. We still can't predict with certainty who will become violent. We still can't cure psychopathy. The work continues. In labs and police departments, people you'll never meet are dedicating their lives to understanding this darkness so the rest of us can live in the light. The real battle isn't just catching killers after they've struck, but preventing them from striking in the first place. The question isn't whether evil exists. It does. The question is, what will we do with that understanding? Will we use it to build better protections, to identify warning signs earlier, and to support victims? The mystery may never be fully solved, but every answer we find brings us closer to a world with less suffering. And that's worth fighting for. Because in the end, understanding evil is how we protect the innocent. What makes us different from the monsters is that we care. We feel. We connect. We protect. That's what makes us human.